Welcome back to Loss, Love, and all the other shit in between. I'm Sean, and if you're joining me today, you're listening or watching episode 9. Today, we're talking about something that sits deep in a lot of people's bones, something that doesn't always get explained properly, but is felt by millions of people every single day. This episode is called Hustler's Ambition, Get Rich or Die Trying. And before anyone jumps to conclusions, this isn't just about money. It's about drive. It's about hunger. It's about the eternal voice that refuses to let you settle for the life you started with. Some people are born into comfort. They grow up in stable environments where opportunities feel normal and success feels like the natural direction life moves in. But a lot of us didn't grow up that way. A lot of us grew up watching struggle, watching parents work themselves into exhaustion just to keep the lights on, watching dreams get pushed aside because survival had to come first. And when you grow up around that kind of reality, something happens inside you. Sometimes it creates fear, sometimes it creates doubt, but for some people, it lights a fire that never really goes out. Hustler's ambition usually doesn't come from luxury, it comes from the opposite. It comes from the watching what happens when people give up. It comes from experiencing moments where you realize that nobody is coming to rescue you. Nobody's going to magically hand you a better life. And if you want something different, you're going to have to build it yourself. That realization can hit hard, but it can also be the moment everything changes. Ambition is powerful, but without purpose, it becomes a prison. The thing about ambition is that it's rarely neat or polite. It doesn't arrive in a calm, organized way. It usually shows up during frustration, anger, or determination. It's that feeling when you look around at your situation and think, there has to be more than this. It's not about arrogance or greed. It's about refusing to accept limits that were placed on you by circumstances you never chose in the first place. But ambition also brings pressure. When you decide you want more from life, you automatically create expectations. Some of those expectations come from yourself. Others come from the people around you. And suddenly there's this invisible weight on your shoulders because you're no longer just surviving day to day. You're chasing something bigger. And that chase requires effort, discipline, and resilience that most people never talk about openly. Now, the world loves success stories, but it rarely talks about the emotional reality behind them. We see the finished product, the business, the wealth, the recognition, but we don't see the years of doubt that came before it. We don't see the nights when the person chasing that dream questioned where they were wasting their own time. We don't see the sacrifices they made while everyone else was relaxing, socializing, or living comfortably in the moment. That's the part of hustler's ambition that often gets misunderstood. It isn't glamorous. Most of the time, it's quiet work, repeated over and over again, long before anyone notices. It makes choices that don't always make sense to the people around you. It's saying no to distractions because you're focused on building something that might take years to become real. And the strange thing is, when you're in that mindset, you don't always feel powerful. Sometimes you feel isolated. Because when you start chasing something bigger than your current circumstances, the people around you don't always understand it. Now, some might support you, but others might question you. They might think you're dreaming too big or taking unnecessary risks. They might tell you to slow down, be realistic, or settle for something safer. But the truth is, ambition and comfort rarely live in the same place. If you want something different, you usually have to step away from what feels familiar. And that step can feel lonely at times because growth often requires you to move in directions that others aren't ready to go to. The other thing nobody really prepares you for is how ambition changes the way you see the world. Once that fire starts burning, you begin to notice opportunities differently. Problems start to look like puzzles instead of barriers. Setbacks stop being permanent failures and start becoming lessons about what we need to be done different from next time. It's not that the ambition removes fear or uncertainty. It just teaches you to move forward despite them. There's also a deep emotional layer to this kind of drive that people don't always talk about. Sometimes hustler's ambition comes from a desire to prove something. Maybe it's proving people wrong who doubted you. Maybe it's proving to your family that the struggle they went through wasn't pointless. Maybe it's proving to yourself that the limits placed on you growing up were never the full story. That kind of motivation can be incredibly powerful, but it can be complicated because when you drive and move your drive, it's tied to proving something. It can push you further than you expected. It can make you work harder than you planned. It can make you chase the goals that once felt impossible, but it can also create pressure that becomes difficult to carry if you're not careful. Ambition at its healthiest isn't just about winning, it's about growth. It's about taking control of your own direction. Instead of drifting through life waiting for circumstances, you change on their own. It's about believing that effort matters, that persistence matters, and that even if the road is difficult, it's still worth walking. For a lot of people listening right now, that feeling will sound familiar. You might be building something quietly in the background of your life right now. Maybe it's a business idea. Maybe it's a career shift. Maybe it's a podcast. Maybe it's a personal transformation that nobody else understands yet. Whatever it is, that internal push you feel isn't random. It's part of you that refuses to accept the way that things started is the way that they have to stay. But ambition alone isn't enough. It's just the spark. What happens next depends on what you do with that spark. Some people let it fade because the road ahead looks too hard. Others hold on to it, nurture it, and slowly turn it into something really thoroughly patient and persistent. And that's where the real journey begins. Because the moment you decide to take your ambition seriously, you step into a completely different mindset. You stop waiting for permission. You stop hoping circumstances will magically improve. Instead, you start building, piece by piece, step by step, sometimes failing along the way, but continuing anyway. That mindset is what separates people who dream from people who eventually create something tangible. It's not about being fearless, it's about being willing to keep moving when fear is present. So when we talk about hustler's ambition, we're really talking about the courage to believe that your life can become something bigger than the environment you started in. It's about recognizing that struggle doesn't have to define the rest of your story. It can actually become the fuel that pushes you forward. And that's where this episode begins, because ambition might start as a spark, but the real challenge isn't finding that spark. The real challenge is what comes next, the grind, the pressure, the sacrifices, and the lessons that shape the person you become while chasing the life that you believe is possible. So once that ambition is lit, once you made that quiet decision in your mind that you want something more out of life, that's when real work begins. Because ambition might feel powerful in the beginning, it might even feel exciting, but eventually excitement fades, and what replaces it is something far less glamorous, the grind. And the grind is where most people start to understand what ambition actually costs. We live in a world now where success is constantly on display. Social media shows the highlights, the achievements, the big moments where someone finally made it. But what almost never gets shown is the long, quiet stretch of work that came before any of these moments existed. The early mornings, the late nights, the day where nothing seems to move forward, even though you're giving everything that you've got. People see success and think it happened overnight. They never see the nights it actually took. That part of the journey is invisible to most people, and because it's invisible, it can sometimes feel lonely. When you're building something, whether it's a career, a business, or even just a better version of yourself, you spend a lot of time doing work that nobody applauds. There are no crowds cheering when you're studying late at night. There's no recognition when you push through exhaustion just to make a little bit of progress. Most of the time, it's just you, your thoughts, and the quiet determination to keep going even when motivation has disappeared. And that's one of the biggest misconceptions about ambition. People assume that those who succeed are constantly motivated, constantly confident, constantly sure of themselves. The reality is usually the opposite. Most people chasing something meaningful spend a lot of time questioning themselves. They wonder if they're making the right decisions. They wonder if all the effort will eventually pay off. And they wonder if they're sacrificing too much for something that might never fully materialize. Self-doubt becomes part of the process. It doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you're on the wrong path. It simply means you're human. When you're pushing yourself beyond what's comfortable or familiar, uncertainty is inevitable. But the difference between those who eventually succeed and those who give up often comes down to one thing: persistence. The grind requires persistence long after the excitement of the idea has faded. It means waking up on days when you'd rather stay in bed. It means continuing to put effort into something even when results are slow. It means being disciplined enough to work towards a goal even when the rewards feel distant. And that level of consistency isn't easy. It demands patience, resilience, and sometimes a level of stubborn belief that borders on irrational. But the stubborn belief is often what keeps the engine running. Because the truth is, when you're in the middle of the grind, you rarely feel like you're winning. Progress tends to happen slowly. Sometimes it feels like you're taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Sometimes it feels like everyone else around you is moving faster or achieving more. Comparison can creep into your mind, and if you're not careful, it can drain your energy. That's why staying focused on your own journey becomes so important. Ambition isn't a race against everyone else. It's a commitment to your own growth and direction. The moment you started measuring your progress slowly against someone else's timeline, you lose sight of the path you are actually on. Every person's circumstances, resources, and starting points are different. What matters is the effort you're putting in and the lessons you're learning along the way. And they're always lessons. The grind teaches you discipline. It teaches you patience. It teaches you how to handle rejection without letting it define you. And it teaches you how to adapt when things don't go the way you expected. And those lessons don't just build success, they build character. Sometimes people assume that ambition is all about reaching a final destination, like there's some magic moment where everything suddenly becomes easy. But most people who have actually achieved something meaningful will tell you that the process of getting there changes you far more than the destination itself. You become tougher mentally, you become more focused, you learn to control your emotions when things go wrong, and perhaps, most importantly, you start to understand that success isn't built on a single moment of brilliance. It's built on consistent effort repeated over time. And none of that means that the grind is easy, because there will be days when you feel exhausted. There will be moments when you question whether the sacrifices are worth it. You might miss social events. You might spend less time relaxing than people around you. And you might even feel misunderstood by friends or family who don't fully grasp what you're trying to build here. Those moments can be tough because humans aren't social creatures. We want connection, support, understanding. And when you deeply focus on building something, it can sometimes feel like you're walking a road that very few people around you are traveling. But that doesn't mean you're alone. Across the world, there are countless people quietly working on their own ambitions, pushing themselves forward in small but meaningful ways. You might never meet most of them, but you share something in common: the refusal to remain stuck in a life that doesn't feel like your full potential. And that shared mindset creates a kind of invisible community, a community of builders, learners, risk takers, and dreamers who understand that the path to something better is rarely comfortable. It's challenging. It demands effort. It tests your patience and your resilience in ways you would never ever expected. But within that challenge, there is also growth. Every obstacle you overcome strengthens your confidence. Every mistake you learn from improves your judgment. And every small step forward adds another layer to the foundation you are building. And eventually, if you stay consistent long enough, those small steps start to compound. But once felt impossible begins to feel achievable. The work that once seemed overwhelming becomes routine. The doubts that once felt heavy start to lose their power. You realize that the grind wasn't just about reaching a goal. It was about becoming the kind of person capable of reaching it. And that transformation is something nobody can take away from you, because long before the world sees any visible success, you've already developed the mindset, discipline, and the resilience that makes success possible in the first place. And that's the part of the hustler's ambition people rarely talk about. The grind doesn't just build results, it builds you. By the time you've been in the grind for a while, something else starts to show up alongside ambition. And that's the cost. Because chasing something bigger than your current life doesn't just require effort, it requires sacrifice. And sacrifice is one of those words that sounds noble when you say it out loud, but living through it can be a completely different experience. When you're deep in the hustle, your time starts to look different from people around you. While others are switching off in the evening, you might still be working. While friends are relaxing on weekends, you might be building, planning, learning, or pushing forward on something that still hasn't paid off yet. At first, that can feel empowering, like you're investing in the future, but over time, those small differences in lifestyle start to add up. You might miss events, you might say no to things you'd normally enjoy. You might even feel like you're living slightly out of sync with the people around you. And that's where the emotional side of ambition starts to show itself. Because the grind doesn't just test your work ethic, it tests your balance. There's also the pressure that comes with chasing something big. When you commit yourself to a vision, it's no longer just an idea floating around in your head. It becomes something that matters to you deeply, and that itself matters. And every setback can feel personal. A failed plan isn't just a failed plan, it feels like a hit to your confidence. And a slow month isn't just a slow month, it can make you question the entire direction you're moving in. That pressure can build quietly if you're not careful. Because some people carry it internally without talking about it. They keep pushing forward on the outside while dealing with doubts and stress on the inside. And from the outside looking in, nobody can see that weight. All they see is someone who looks determined, focused, maybe even successful. But the truth is, that ambition often comes with emotional strain. You're constantly evaluating yourself. You're thinking about what you could do better, what you need to improve, what the next step should be. Your mind rarely switches off completely because the vision you're chasing is always sitting somewhere in the background. And then there's the question that eventually arises for a lot of people in the hustle. What exactly am I chasing? At the beginning, ambition can feel very simple. You want financial stability. You want freedom. You want to prove to yourself that you can build something meaningful. But as time passes and the grind continues, you start to realize that success isn't just a destination you reach and then everything magically becomes perfect. Winning isn't just money in the bank. Sometimes winning is peace in your mind. Money can improve your options. It can reduce certain stresses. It can give you access to opportunities that weren't available before. But it doesn't automatically solve deeper emotional questions about purpose, identity, and balance. Some people reach financial success only to realize they sacrificed too much along the way. Relationships are strained by years of absence, health neglected because work always came first. And then moments with your family that can never be repeated because the hustle demanded attention elsewhere. Those are difficult realizations to face. And that's why it's important to talk honestly about the cost of ambition, not just the rewards, because when you're aware of the potential trade-offs, you can make decisions more consciously. You can pursue success without blindly sacrificing everything that makes life meaningful in the first place. The grind can build you, but if you're not careful, it can also take everything away from you. The truth is, ambition is powerful, but it needs direction. Without direction, it can turn into endless chasing. One goal after another, one milestone followed by the next. You reach something you've once dreamed of, and instead of feeling satisfied, your mind immediately jumps to the next target, and suddenly the finish line keeps moving. That kind of cycle can leave people feeling strangely empty, even when they're technically succeeding. They've built the career, the income, the reputation, but somewhere along the way, They forgot to check whether the life they were building actually felt fulfilling. And that's not a failure of ambition. It's a reminder that ambition needs balance. Because the real goal isn't just to win financially. The real goal is to build a life that actually feels worth living. A life where success enhances your well-being instead of replacing it. A life where your drive creates opportunity without destroying your peace. That balance isn't always easy to maintain. The hustle can be addictive in its own way. Progress feels good, achievement feels good, recognition feels good. But if you're constantly pushing without pausing to reflect, it's easy to lose sight of why you started chasing success in the first place. Most people begin their journey wanting freedom, freedom from financial stress, freedom from limitations that once held them back, freedom to provide better opportunities for themselves or their families. But if ambition turns into constant pressure, that freedom can start to feel distant again. So the real challenge isn't just building success, it's building success in a way that still allowed space for life itself, space for relationships, space for your health, space for moments of quiet where you can actually appreciate how far you've come. Because at the end of the day, hustler's ambition isn't meant to trap you inside endless work. It's meant to create possibilities. And the people who navigate this journey best are the ones who eventually realize that success isn't just about accumulating more. It's about creating a life where the things that truly matter can actually thrive. By the time you've spent enough years in the hustle, something interesting starts to happen. Your understanding of success begins to shift. The goals that once felt like the ultimate destination start to look different. And when you're actually standing closer to them, the beginning of the journey, the success, often looks very simple. It's money, security, freedom from that struggle that shaped your entire life. And there's nothing wrong with that. Wanting stability, opportunity, and the ability to provide for yourself or the people you love is a completely natural motivation. In fact, for many people, it's the very thing that sparks their ambition in the first place. But the longer you stay in the grind, the more you realize that success isn't just about reaching a number in your bank account or achieving a title that impresses other people. Those things can be part of the journey, but they're rarely the full story. Because when the dust settles and the work pauses for a moment, what really matters becomes clearer. Winning starts to look less like constant motion and more like balance. It's the ability to wake up in the morning without the same weight of financial stress that once hung over you. It's the freedom to make decisions based on what actually matters instead of what survival demands. And it's having the time and space to enjoy the relationships and the experiences that make life meaningful. Real success for many people becomes the ability to breathe, to step back and realize that the struggle you went through wasn't pointless, that the late nights, the discipline, the persistence through failure are all added up to something tangible, not just in terms of money or career progress, but in terms of the person you become along the way. Because one of the biggest truths about hustler's ambition is that it changes you. The process of chasing something difficult forces you to develop the resilience, patience, and mental toughness. It teaches you how to keep moving forward when things don't work out the first time. It teaches you that failure isn't the end of the road. It's just information about what needs to be done differently next time. And those lessons stay with you long after the original goal has been achieved. They shape the way you approach challenges. They shape the way you support other people who are trying to build something for themselves. And they shape the way you look at life itself. Because once you've pushed through difficult seasons, you start to realize how capable you really are. That realization is powerful, but it also brings a responsibility to yourself. Because once you understand that ambition can create opportunity, you also have to decide what kind of life you want that opportunity to build. You have to decide whether success will simply become another form of pressure or whether it will become the foundation for a life that actually feels fulfilling. For some people, that means slowing down slightly and reconnecting with the things that got pushed aside during the hardest years of your grind. For others, it means continuing to build, but doing it with clearer boundaries and priorities. Either way, the key is awareness. Success isn't just about reaching a point where the struggle ends. It's about creating a life where the effort you invested actually pays back in meaningful ways. A life where ambition gave you freedom rather than trapping you inside endless work. And that's something worth remembering. If you're in the middle of your own hustle right now, if you're listening to this while you're building something, maybe working long hours, maybe pushing yourself towards a goal that still feels far away, just know that the journey you're on is shaping you in ways you might not even fully realize yet. Every challenge you face is building resilience. Every setback is teaching you something valuable. Every moment where you choose persistence over comfort is strengthening your ability to create the life that you want. And even the road can feel lonely at times. You're not the only one walking it. There are countless people out there right now who are chasing their own version of something better. People who refuse to accept the limitations they were handed at the start of their lives. People who are quietly building, learning, and pushing forward step by step. If that's you, then this episode is for you. Because hustler's ambition isn't really about the phrase, get rich or die trying. When you look at it more deeply, it's about refusing to settle for a life that doesn't reflect your potential. It's about believing that effort and persistence can create change. And it's about having the courage to pursue something meaningful, even when the path isn't guaranteed. But remember this as well. The goal isn't to destroy yourself in the process. The goal is to build a life where the things that matter the most, your well-being, your relationships, your sense of purpose can actually grow alongside your success. That's what real winning looks like. Not just surviving the grind, but eventually reaching a place where the grind gave you options, a place where you can look back and see that struggle shaped you without breaking you. And before we wrap up this episode, I want to take this moment to say something to everyone who's been listening and watching this podcast and supporting my journey. Thank you. Thank you for showing up week after week, sharing this space with me. This podcast was never meant to be perfect or polished. It's meant to be a real conversation about life. The struggles, the lessons, the moments where things feel messy and complicated, and the moments where clarity finally appears. The fact that you're here listening or watching means more than you probably realize, because every time someone chooses to spend part of their day reflecting, learning, or just thinking a little bit deeper about life, it reminds me why conversations like this matters. So wherever you are right now, wherever you're at the beginning of your hustle, deep in the grind, or finally starting to see the results of years of effort, keep moving forward. Stay ambitious, stay grounded, and remember that success isn't just about how high you climb. It's about the kind of life you're building on your journey. And that's something worth chasing. Because what I've realized over time is that hustler's ambition isn't about proving the world wrong anymore. It's about proving to yourself that you can build something meaningful out of the chaos. Success isn't just the money. It's the freedom. It's the peace. It's knowing the struggle meant something. And if you're out there right now grinding, pushing forward, trying to build something better for yourself or your family, I see you. Keep going. Just don't forget to live along the way. Thank you.